Talking corruption, fighting corruption in Nigeria. We are told that if you fight corruption, it fights you back. If you don't fight corruption, it eats the very fabric of the nation called Nigeria. And corruption has been the bane, it's been the reason why this country is not developing. I'm trying to paraphrase or summarize the stand of former President Muhammadu Buhari, the immediate past president of Nigeria. He was, as you said, committed to the fight against corruption. But whether he actually fought it for good 8 years is a different thing altogether. Welcome to the Third Eye Television Africa. My name is Ben Shaman. We are reaching you at the Central Business District in Abuja, and we want to talk corruption. Is it being fought very well? I have a guest, a human rights activist, a lawyer who has always led his own troops, let me call it this way, Nigerian citizens, to fight, to protest against corruption in this country. I'm talking of Barrister Frank Tietie, Director, Citizens Advocacy for Social and Economic Rights, CESA, or KESA for brief. Welcome, Frank Tietie.
Thank you, Mr. Ben. It's my pleasure. And I find it particularly interesting when it comes to, invitations like this that deal with how to move our country forward. So thank you once again.
Thank you for coming on board. And in Nigeria, corruption has always been the thing. Very religious people, very corrupt people. Transparency International will say we are corrupt. Some BBC and other media organizations will say Nigerians are very, very religious. Contradictions. Now we have agencies, very many of them, to fight against corruption. But it persists. Is it that the laws are too many, or they are not enough, or we do have credible men and women, citizens, to fight against corruption in this country?
Well, I think that fighting corruption in this country has become a career for many people, to the extent that if there is no more corruption, there will be nothing for them to fight. But that's a very sad way to open this conversation. I would rather look at it from a more realistic point of view that looks at corruption as an institutional and systemic problem. There is also a view that considers corruption to be cultural. Cultural in the sense that there are many cultures, there are many communities, there are many expectations that whenever people get close to political power, to the center of political decision making, they are expected to dip their hands in the cookie jar or bite more than every other person with regards to how much they can get for the national cake, by hook or crook. To the extent that if they dare return from any form of public office, political office that they have been appointed to serve, and come back and all that they have to show is a clean record of how much they did not take money illegally or how clean they were, they will be abused by the communities that they represent. Now, that makes it cultural. However, your question is very, very, very instructive in the sense that, is it that we don't have sufficient institutions in Nigeria to fight corruption, or we don't have committed men and women in these institutions? Interestingly, the principal instrument for fighting corruption is law. That is, the expectation that if there is conformity with legal standards, there wouldn't be anything like corruption. What are we talking about corruption? Corruption is simply not following the law with regards to financial regulations, or in terms of abuse of office, or in terms of self-enrichment, self-aggrandizement, using state resources as and then more especially, which is very, very bad, the idea of misappropriation, which is actually criminal. Budget, you go to the National Assembly, budget is approved, and then monies are released. Instead of applying the money for those items that the National Assembly has passed the budget for, there is now you there's this idea of environment. You take the money and put it somewhere else. And then we also look at the very common aspect, even at the stage of budgeting, which they call budget padding, for the purpose of inflating the budget, as against the expectation that when the money is passed and is approved and it gets to the point of implementation, you also rig the contractors who will be approved to implement that aspect of the budget in expectation of kickbacks. So the concept and the practice of corruption, they run through every aspect of government. So because it sustains a large percentage of the population, it's an economy in itself that is different from the formal economy. So the corruption as an economy, if you were to deal with it and stamp it out as we aspire as Nigerians, then there will be a total collapse of another segment of the economy. So sometimes analysts will argue that Nigeria is not yet ready to tackle corruption, because when you remove the foundations that support corruption, or the foundations that corruption supports in this country, we are not yet ready to face the consequences, because many people will not be able to adjust.
Now, many people will not be able to adjust, but there are also many people who should also conduct themselves by adjusting so that they can fit into Nigeria. Who are these people? Mostly government officials.
Yes.
Sometimes they just do it with this I don't care attitude. Look at the billions. I mean, former governor of Kogi State, for example, I mean, they said they allege that he siphoned, he left, alias white elephant, he left with people's funds. Look at former ministers, look at former governors. The allegation is that they are always corrupt. Why is it that in spite of swearing with either the Bible or the Quran, they still go into this? And that's why some people are saying, why don't we examine their psychological forms before they take into
I think that what we fail to understand is that we've always expressed and described corruption in this country as being endemic. That is, it is part and parcel of the way of life of the people. We have not looked at it from that perspective, that should we do a surgical operation. You are recommending psychology, but someone is saying no, there should be surgery, because a social cycle, or rather I will invert it and say a psychosocial, analysis of corruption is that an average Nigerian expects the politically exposed person to be corrupt. That's first of all a problem. Now, what more we should really bother about is that, have we acknowledged that the tendency to be corrupt in public office is nearly 99%? Until we come to that point as individual Nigerians and as a collective, and to a large extent, which is a presumption in law, that absolute power will corrupt absolutely. So when you fail to put those checks in place, and in situations even when those checks are in place and you don't apply them, the natural tendency is that there will be corruption. There will be abuse of office, because that's what leads to what we call corruption. Because you remember, we were in this country when the president was grappling with whether to define corruption as stealing or not. The truth about it is that corruption is far, far beyond stealing. When abuse of office, corrupt enrichment, self-enrichment, using the position, using your position as a politically exposed person, either whether elected or appointed by the political authority. What it means is that unless we come to that point where we rejig our systems to make them so foolproof that those who operate them will not be able to take advantage and find loopholes to perpetrate corruption. So where the problem is human beings is failing to understand that human beings will always be corrupt when they have the opportunity. However, we are now able to acknowledge that and put systems in place that prevent corruption. Why is it that we are in this country, we allow one man to be alleged to have stolen a certain amount of money, billions of amount of money? We allow one woman to have been alleged to have stolen hundreds of billions of naira, and sometimes in dollars. Now, where were we? Were we sleeping? Where were the systems? Where were the approving authorities? Where were the banking authorities? Where were those who are supposed to carry on the checks, approvals, and then what we call internal control and all sorts of forms of control to prevent this from happening? Why have we made it a stock in trade to allow corruption to perpetrate, and then we come out and give ourselves one very big task and say, oh, we are chasing after this man, he's taking so much money, we are chasing after this. Where were we when one man sitting, I think he was kind of general or so, kind of general, how did he, in fact, I didn't believe that the accusation that one man siphoned 109 billion naira, and the EFCC was thinking, EFCC was running around thinking that he was playing to the gallery, thinking that he's being busy. No, it's a crass failure that a system will allow one man to beat it to the point that the man will take 109 billion, and then you now come to the media to be celebrating that you are working, that you are chasing after the man. And then in the long run, you are not negotiating with the man whether or not he should give you half, and then you let him go and spend the other half in peace. So we must acknowledge the failure of our systems first and foremost.
And talking of systemic failures, that you look at, just like you've spoken about the agencies, the EFCC is there, the Constitution is there itself. You have the Financial Intelligence Unit, FIU. You also have the ICPC. All are on ground. Then this money is not carried physically in banks. It's wired. But why is it that FIU, that is supposed to be in every branch of the bank, this thing jumped and passed? Do you smell a rat?
It is, you see, we have not really considered much about the abuse of authority, because authority, like we describe it, like in attempt to be defined, is that the right to exercise power. It's a very, very difficult thing to challenge. Let's get that straight. When a sitting minister picks a pen and approves, he or she is exercising authority. Now, the ulterior motives attached to that approval are things that needed to be interrogated. Who could interrogate that when an authority has signed, has approved? That's what the problem is. So, who are those men and women that exercise authority? And who is supposed to check them? That is the reason why we must now go back to Section 88 of the Constitution, which gives only the National Assembly, not EFCC, not ICPC, not the police, not the DSS or the National Security Advisor. They don't have such powers. Only the National Assembly has the power to carry out investigation of funds that have been allocated, that have been approved by the federal government through the budget, the Appropriation Act enacted by the National Assembly. So the real responsibility, therefore, lies in the hands of the National Assembly. And the National Assembly actually does not appear to be slack, because we see it set up a myriad of committees, many committees, whether the House committees or Senate committees. Their sole purpose is to carry out investigation. They call it oversight functions. Yes. So the idea is this: they were supposed to be able to call any minister, any director, or any director general, or any head of department, and ask questions and say, where is this money? Let's see how much has been approved. Okay, how much has been disbursed? Where has it gone to? Who is the contractor? To what extent has it performed? So let us now look at where the problem lies. How many times does the National Assembly invite heads of agencies or ministers, and then they honor such invitations? And when they come, they look at the members of the National Assembly as if that they are doing them a favor. We forget that we are a republic. The meaning is that as a republic, we are a country governed by laws made by the people, represented by the members of parliament. So that's why the members of the public are actually in charge of this country through the representative governance. So until the National Assembly takes its place and its powers under Section 88 of the Constitution extended to Section 89. Because under Section 89, if you disobey any directive of the National Assembly under Section 88, the National Assembly can now activate its enforcement powers through the Inspector General of Police by arresting anybody in this country. Yes. Apart from the president,
yes,
or the vice president, or governors and deputy governors. So, the real responsibility of tackling corruption first begins with the National Assembly.
Yes. In spite of the fact that the honors, the duties, primarily is with the National Assembly, but the FIU, these people are posted in banks. Each time huge sums of money are brought in, they know. That each time they are going out, they know.
The NFIU, you see, what the NFIU does is it's more or less like a reporting institution. So once, that's why I started by, pointing out where an authority has done something. So if NFIU confirms that a certain amount of money has been approved by the minister and is going from this place to that place, it has essentially done its job. What really happens is those approved money, are they tracked from the point of approval, disbursement, to the point of expenditure for the particular purpose? It is in that travel from that point of disbursement to implementation that some form of darkness happens. That is so. I'm not going to tell you the various forms of corruption, which include the United Nations Office of Drug and Crimes has much of the modalities of corruption. How monies are laundered, how monies are converted from naira to more portable currencies like the US dollar, and then they exchange hands, right? So on those, you see, monies are siphoned, especially in that particular case of that public official who was alleged to have stolen 109 billion. There are situations where fictitious accounts, the accounts for the purpose of money laundering, so massive number of accounts that are operated in different names, however, when traced to the very root, have actually been operated by one person or a few persons or one organization, which serves as a proxy to the man who has authority, who has actually approved the money. So the systems are wide, and to a large extent, those who are pursuing you just referred to the NFIU and many of the anti-corruption institutions, they are lacking behind in terms of innovation when it comes to tracking those who have the means and schemes of perpetrating corruption in this country, especially with regards to illicit financial flows outside this country, taking monies that belong to this country to outside this country, especially through multinationals, through inflated contracts, through consultancy and all sort of businesses that are legitimate on the face of it, but there are serious conduits of corruption, corrupt enrichment, and ferreting of money out of this country.
Barrister Frank Tietie, Director of Citizens Advocacy for Social and Economic Rights, here in Nigeria, here in Abuja, and of course the meeting point is Third Eye TV. My name is Ben Shema. Now let's move forward. Just a few days ago, the United States of America and the Minister of Justice, Fabemi, here in Nigeria, and Attorney General of the Federation, money has been released to Nigeria or recovered from former Minister of Petroleum, Diazeni Alison Madueke. When you heard of that whooping sum, 52.88 million US dollars, when you heard about this, what was your initial reaction?
It's the same sense of collective failure on our part, because we always think that the outcome justifies the input. No, that's a collective indictment on all of us, and it's what I just tried to emphasize. That how did it happen? That somebody first of all beat the system and stole that kind of money. Now we could not even catch the person. It was not until the person got abroad that the systems there were now able to expose the person and then the person was ultimately, prosecuted, and then the money forfeited to the state. Now, so the first thing that comes to my mind is that this is another, failure on our part, and that should be a major challenge in investing in the areas of preventing corruption. I don't think we have invested enough. You see, we still use the petition system in our country to fight corruption, right? And I think it's poor. As an anti-corruption institution like the EFCC or the ICPC, you cannot wait for somebody that is aggrieved, who probably didn't get his share of the corruption, or the money was expected, or is now probably disgruntled as a result of what has happened, that now sits down to first of all go and look for a lawyer to pen a petition, and then make appropriate references to the sections of the ICPC law or the EFCC Act, and then, or probably in general, the criminal code, before the ICPC will now put together a team of investigators, and the same in the EFCC. No. Even though I can commend the ICPC in practice, because I have encountered it myself, that they do carry out some form of what I call, occasional inspection of the books in the various ministries, departments, and agencies. They do that. But how many officers do they have? How many of these? The last time we checked, we see an over-bloated federal government that we are thinking for ages on how to trim down the number of MDAs so that they become manageable. So we know that it's difficult to actually trace these funds. But we must invest seriously, especially in this age of information technology, where we can find a way of tracking funds, especially disbursement, and tracking them to the point of expenditure, until we are able to, on the desk of the ICPC or the FCC, until they are unable to, or rather until they are able to track such monies using these systems, we will continue to have these sad occurrences of what I call, with almost utmost humility, some form of national disgrace. That it is when the money got to the UK, or it got to the United States, or it got somewhere, where some kind of governance has some high standard of conscience, that they cannot find out that this money belongs to Nigeria. I can understand in the days of General Abacha, if we said monies left this country because it was a pariah state. But under democracy, under a presidential federalist system of government, we still have persons perpetrating such kind of humongous corruption. It must be a serious collective failure on our part.
Now, let us look at, yes, this money is being returned to Nigeria. But you can see that the returning country is giving conditions.
Yes.
That 50 million US dollars must be used for rural electrification, clean energy, so to speak. Then the other condition is that 2.88 million US dollars must be sent to the International Institute for Justice in Malta, and that will be used to train officers generally in Africa for the fight against corruption in Africa. I mean, how fair is this?
Let me tell you something. Corruption exists, and succeeds and grows because of a very wide network that crisscrosses and intersperses international boundaries, in fact, continental boundaries. That's the reason why the Intergovernmental Action Against Money Laundering, GIABA, it's working very hard to stop illicit financial flows, especially monies that flow from the natural resources of countries like Nigeria, talking about oil and gas, and then the solid, what they call solid minerals. They're actually the all minerals. But the point is this: as a lawyer, I can argue like this. If Nigeria, let's reverse it. If Nigeria were to exercise its, high skills in tracking monies that are illicit, especially drug money, flowing from maybe Latin America through Nigeria and is headed to the United States. If Nigeria was able to track or probably seize such money in Nigeria, what would the Nigerian government do? You see, there is a presumption in law that where there are laws guiding forfeiture of funds to the federal government when they are proceeds of crime. So ideally, such drug money flowing from Latin America, passing through Nigeria that has been caught or trapped in Nigeria should be forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria. It is not Nigeria's business to be thinking of looking for who owns the money or whether or not the money is clean. Right? In the case of money laundering, let me not say drug money in this case, and then with the intention of returning that money. We as Nigerians who have done that good work of seizing such illicit funds should have such monies forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria. That is our thinking as patriots, as Nigerians, as nationalists, right? So, if Nigeria, again, because I'm a very proud Nigerian, because I grew up in Nigeria when our country was very strong. I don't know how strong it is now, especially military, very strong. It was very strong in having a lot of money, funding all sorts of liberation movements in the days of apartheid, and then also funding, peace movement. You have been a war journalist for much of your life. Sure. You know how much our country spent in restoring peace to Sierra Leone or to Cote d'Ivoire or to other places, even in Liberia. So I grew up at a time where Nigeria was said to be a very strong country. If Nigeria now wants to be paternalistic, and probably that such monies belong, and maybe some monies belong to small countries like Gambia and others, Nigeria should be in a place to say, look, I am interested in how this money goes. I'm interested in people of Gambia. I'm interested in people of Latin America. I want the money to go in such and such a way. So you're asking me as to fairness, if legal scholars, and we've seen situations where illicit monies from Nigeria were seized, especially with regards to a private jet that was used to ferret some huge amount of dollars for the purpose of buying, arms from the black market. Where were those monies? Were they returned to Nigeria? If South Africa was going to return that money to Nigeria, and it was gracious enough that it was going to return that money to Nigeria, would we contest fairness when it says, please, if you are bringing that money, please invest in water for your people? At least they are stakeholders in that money. Monies they could have used one form of legal chicanery to argue that belongs to them and should be forfeited to their own government. They are now, because operating on high standards, because holding themselves to high standards of international law and international relations, saying that they want to give the money back to Nigeria. I think it's fair that they are able to have a say in the way the money is expended. They did it in the Abacha loot, we didn't complain. So why are we complaining now? Especially when we failed to prevent the money from being stolen, we failed to track the money, and then we didn't even prosecute the money. I mean the fraud, I would say. So I think it's fair to allow them have a say if they intend to return that money. There are monies belonging to this country that are locked in Swiss banks without trace, without persons having what I call the passcodes and whatever to access such monies. Would the Swiss government or the Swiss banking industry, be fair enough to carry out to lift what we call the veil? And then pierce it and see who are the real owners. So we'll talk about the issues of beneficial ownership of those accounts, of those businesses, for the purpose of returning them to Nigeria. Are they that gracious?
Well, maybe we wait to see. But while waiting to see if they will be that gracious, but we look at some people are advocating for what you call name and shame. Then let me also put it this way, that many of this money so recovered, why don't we just build some very big hospitals and name them after the thieves?
That's a very innovative one.
Yes, so it becomes a kind of name and shame. What's your opinion on that?
That's a very innovative one. The truth is this. I've said it many times that the simple goal of criminal law, criminal procedure, is that catch the thief, catch the wrongdoer, catch the offender, make him go through the trial process, which is a very humiliating process because you have to answer questions. And then if convicted, found guilty, and sentenced to prison as punishment, that will now serve as a deterrence to others. So sometimes we shouldn't be unnecessarily emotional. We should have standards. That's why all of us are equal before the law. So we shouldn't treat, and that's why I didn't quite support the idea of let's have special courts for anti-corruption. No, because we shouldn't treat those who perpetrate corruption with some, so we shouldn't give them some special status. The way we are giving special status to politicians who are not doing a very good job. We give them special status. There are cases in court, from the court of first instance to the Supreme Court, for the past, they are still lingering there for 20 years. And then we somehow thought among us, among our politicians, that we should have a law that should give them a special procedure that all their cases be concluded in 180 days. Why? It's not fair. It's not fair. So first, we shouldn't just give them any form of special treatment. So because look at the treatment they are getting. Look at the kind of media trial. Look at the celebrity status they get when they are going to the court. And then accompanied with armed escort. Sometimes they are not, and most times they don't even have handcuffs, because like the way they do it in the United States, that they can put you in handcuffs and say, no, it's not because we want to shame you. We believe you can commit suicide because of the shame you are facing now. We don't want you to kill yourself, so that's why we put you in handcuffs. So, but in Nigeria, you need to see the kind of glorified appearances that persons who have been alleged to be corrupt. But the point is this: we have a system that there's a presumption of innocence toward them, no matter how much of the crime that you have committed in this country. There's the presumption of innocence. In that case, however smart, however innovative that naming and shaming may be, can we say it is a much of a deterrence? If prison terms, have not been much of a deterrent, is it when you name a hospital after someone who has stolen, and then you say Alaji or doctor or the chief so hospital who has been this is the money he stole, we got it from him, and that's how we built this hospital.
Proceed of corruption.
No. I don't think it will be feasible.
Okay. Now let us look at you see, the Minister of State for Defense appeared at the National Assembly, and of course she requested for more money, and people were saying, look, the soldiers are not doing enough. And he said something that is very, very instructive. He said, with some 20 armored personnel carriers, APCs, how can that take care of even Katsina alone? Not to talk of a federation with as many as over 200 million people. Now, the same subject matter, the Azeni, her trinkets, necklaces, rings, worth $14 million were forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria. So when corruption is actually fighting.
Well, if we are saying all this, we should say it in full. Are they not part of those trinkets that have been reported to have been stolen in the custody of the EFCC as we speak? So that's an ongoing investigation. So it's good that we are announcing that trinkets, that all sorts of jewelries that were seized, that are exhibits that are supposed to be presented to the court as exhibits, have now also been relooted in the custody of the FCC. So our problem is big, but you are raising a very, very important issue when you're talking about defense spending. With all humility, and I stand to be corrected, I do not think that we are spending enough on defense in this country. With barely, we are not. Given apart from the challenges of insurgency and the war against terror that we're fighting, the peculiar war against terror that we're fighting in this country, ordinarily, I don't think we are making the right expenditure. What's the number of troops that we have? I do not have the exact number at this stage in terms of the number of policemen and the number of soldiers we have. But I know, at the last check, it's abysmally, incomparably low to the number of persons we are in as a people. And then, so that's the case. Unfortunately, we have witnessed painfully, apart from the allegations against former NSA, Sambo Dasuki, and then a few generals like Bade and others who have been alleged to have, siphoned monies that were supposed to be used to fight insurgency. It's unthinkable, very much unthinkable. I don't want to sound like a broken record about the need for us to have some kind of fail-safe system against this thing. However, I think that we should come to terms with the fact that we are a federation. So we keep talking about going to National Assembly to ask for more money. How much money is the state government voting, first of all, generating from the people to the extent of investing it in security. Because we think security is money we just we painfully spend. No, it's an investment. Because without security, there can be no other investment. So I recall that the most important threat against either foreign investment or local investment is the lack of security. So it is actually the principal business of government. That's the reason why I don't think that we can spend money enough on providing security. So it is, if our country is in this state where it's difficult to travel carry on some form of interstate travel, whether at any part of or at any time of the day, I think we have a problem. If I did not live in this country, and I'm not talking about where I was doing youth service, where you could just deliberately wake up at 11 p.m. I'm talking about 11 p.m. and head in this town, in this city, and head to Jabi and say you want to go to Lagos. You didn't care. Because, and then you even felt that was the safest time to travel. Now what has happened? So, with this degradation, with the state of decadence we are experiencing with regards to our security situation, nobody is enough. And when you talk about, I also watched those proceedings, and I listened to Senator Ali Ndume saying that with more helicopters, with more APCs, I think the problem is when these monies are voted for these purchases, will they ultimately be bought, or will they not be? There were situations where the monies were bought were voted for the purpose of purchasing trucks to move our troops, and they either bought second-hand trucks or they never bought them at all. So it's all back to corruption. We know that government is suffering from paucity of funds. However, those that are available, those funds that are available, have they actually been applied judiciously and appropriately for the purpose? But we see these forms, I would say in plural terms, of criminal misappropriation of these funds. That's where the problem is.
So where's the way out?
The way out is, first, we were supposed to have a national orientation. And it's painful to me, and I feel very pained that somehow we made, maybe because of the time I was born and the time I lived in this country, it seems as if we made more progress. And I hate to say this, and I will emphasize this, and I don't like to say this, that we seem to have made more progress in terms of national orientation, and I emphasize under the military. Why? Why is it that it's difficult for us to have a national reorientation in this country? That we need to build a country that's our own, and that the pathways of nation building include the fact that we need to follow set standards, that we all need to be equal before the law, and that we all have to have the resources of state channeled in such a manner that we benefit all Nigerians, and that we should not operate a system that will not care for the poor, but that will only enrich those who are at the top. Why is it that the war against the discipline succeeded? Why is it that we have all those forms of war against the discipline and corruption under General Abacha? Why did it succeed to that extent? And it's so difficult, and it seems as if there's a cacophony of confusion, confusing voices as to what is now the national ethos of this country. So you ask me for a solution. The solution is in us. It is in our determination to say we want to build our country, and it's for ourselves and for the future of our children yet unborn. However, it seems as if we don't have faith in this country. That's why the young people of this country, their main ambition is to japa in quote, whereas the ones who are staying, their main ambition is to replicate what the politically exposed persons are doing now, to have a shot at political power so that they can carry on self-enrichment. So we need to come back and ask ourselves and be committed to the purpose of this country. We can build a great country given the terms of the human resources that we have and the national resources that we have. Goodness, Africa's greatest country. We have proved it time and again. Look at our GDP, look at our people, look at our resources, look at our size. and look at the respect, look at the fear that other countries have of us. Even big countries like United States and the rest are afraid if this country stands on its feet, what will happen to the world in terms of international relations? We need to come together and ask ourselves why and what do we want. Until we set those goals and begin to work towards them, unfortunately, it happened more in the days of the military, which I don't want. I don't want a military government. However, why would it be that? Is it because it's a command and control system of government? It's able to give us order. I mean, look at the various military governments, even the ones that led us to civil war and created a lot of confusion for us. But they were able to tell us that, look, one Nigeria. They were able to say, look, agriculture. They were able to say, one Africa, and all of that. They gave us policy. They were able to rally the people together for a common cause. So I think we should start from there.
Okay. Now, a very last one. It appears Nigeria tends to get justice from abroad. What do I mean? Look at the case of Alamansinga by Bayelsa State. Look at Onaboife, Ibori James, Delta State. Then look at the case of the Azeni, always coming from abroad. Now, EFCC will give you, I mean, allegations, how many count charges? Close to 200. In the end, the court will say your accused is innocent, tabula rasa. But abroad, they are jailed. So what is happening? Why are we getting justice from abroad?
It's an interesting question. Very interesting question, but it's simple. The simple is that today, political will matters a lot. If public servants who are supposed to be immune from political interference in their work fail to exercise such independence, we will always have such a problem. In a situation where a public servant who is probably the head of EFCC, for example, is committed to ensuring that he gets justice for the state, because justice is, you know, the issue you have raised now is whether the state has justice. Now, the challenge comes where the political authority now interferes with the work of the supposed independent public servant. So the difference is that in the UK or in the United States, you still see, and in the United States, for example, you still see to a large extent an independent FBI. Not so independent. Not so independent. We still see to a large extent an independent London Metropolitan Police or MI6 or MI5, but not so independent, because recent revelations are showing that they were not so independent. Why in the United States they were very quick to prosecute Trump, they were not. The FBI was very quick to prosecute Trump. They were not very quick to prosecute or investigate Hunter Biden. And President Joe Biden, knowing that if Hunter Biden would be investigated, he could be sent to prison, has even pardoned him in advance. Now, we are seeing the case of pedophiles in the United Kingdom that has been a problem. Pedophilia has been a problem perpetrated by people in power. But we haven't seen the special forces or the special departments like the MI6 or the London Metropolitan Police decided to investigate because of political interference. So it's a simple answer. The answer is that there is greater political interference in the investigation of corruption cases in Nigeria more than we have in the UK and United States. That's why we have different results.
The fight against corruption has to rage on like wildfire, so that, like it is said, if we don't fight corruption, corruption will finish us. But again, as we fight, it fights back. And that is why today, trinkets, jewelries from the Azeni that were exhibits are being relooted by alleged staff of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Some of them, again, they are facing justice.
Yeah, some of them have been, disciplined. So they just recently dismissed. But it's not enough. It's not enough.
Well, that is Barrister Frank Tietie, Director, Citizens Advocacy for Social and Economic Rights. Thank you for coming to this program on the Third Eye TV.
My pleasure. as
Thank
always.
you. Thank you for coming.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. My name is Ben Shema. Let's do it again and again.